guys, welcome to another episode of Alienwares Lessons with Saint, and today we're joined with our special guest, Travis Gafford. And what are we going to be talking about today, Travis?
We're going to be talking about cheating, which is something I've never ever done in my entire life, but I hear is a thing that people do on occasion. Now, people may be familiar with cheating. Everyone's familiar with cheating because this is something that happens in traditional sports and competition all the time. A very relevant example that happened recently was the whole Lance Armstrong thing where he was caught doping and had a whole bunch of stuff revoked after the investigations came out. And Saint, do you have anything that you can think of that happened recently sort of along the same lines?
Because it's not that recent, but if you guys remember Space Jam, the Monstars actually took the powers from the NBA pros, and they ended up getting stomped on by the special sauce by the Tiny Toon Adventures, and cheating just doesn't pay out, kids.
Esports is no stranger to cheating either. For instance, about 2 years ago, there was that whole situation between Azubu Frost and TSM. What happened there, Saint?
The infamous Wong incident where he turned around. You guys remember they had the stages where the player booths were not actually in a booth, and they had the actual game live going on behind them. So during a pause, he actually turned around during, he went like this, and he turned around during the pause, and you could actually see where all the wards were and all the vision was on the enemy map. And they ended up fining him quite a bit of money. It was like 10 or 20K or something.
Yeah, there was a ton of money that was...
Yeah, some ridiculous amount of money. And regardless, they still ended up in second place in that tournament. They made it all the way to the finals, but I think they removed Woong right after that tournament, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a huge scar. People still make mentions of that every time Woong is mentioned. It's just the cheating that followed him around forever.
Yeah, do you have any instances that you would know about?
Yeah, actually, so another instance that happened in esports that was just much longer than that ago. There was an incident where Warcraft 3 was kind of starting off in Korea, eventually got really big in China, but Brood War was really big in Korea. Warcraft 3 showed up and Moon and a lot of other Night Elf players had been winning all these different tournaments. And one of the tournament organizers thought that, okay, maybe he will fix one of the matches so it's a little bit more exciting, and so he actually changed some of the values on the maps people were playing on, so some of the other races had like an unfair advantage. And basically when that whole cheating and match fixing thing came out, it really was a huge blow to Warcraft 3 in Korea. It never really recovered from that afterwards, and so that whole scene just sort of died out in Korea.
Yeah, I think it's really sad too. Like, Warcraft 3 became really popular in China, and I would have really liked to have seen it become as prominent as StarCraft was. I think it actually was a better game overall.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of stuff, like basically cheating can have not just repercussions on the tournament or the player or that situation, but huge like global implications.
Just ruin esports for everybody, man. A lot of tournament organizers have been putting controls in place to really crack down on cheating.
Yeah, for instance, I know that Riot takes cell phones from you guys before you get on stage and from the other LCS players, so there's no like, oh, I'm gonna have somebody like vibrate the cell phone.
Text you or whatever,
yeah, exactly.
like Skype you, and then it'd be buzzing in your pocket, like, watch out, they're ganking you.
Yeah, exactly.
And on top of that, they also pump white noise into the headsets. Not only are they noise canceling headsets, and you're usually in a soundproof booth in most cases, unless you're on like an LCS stage, but they actually pump white noise into the headset so that you can't really hear anything around. You can maybe hear like when the crowd erupts and starts cheering and all that, because that's just like shaking at that point. Right. But you're not gonna be able to hear somebody yell out like, watch out for the gank. Yeah.
So I know there's always been kind of this discussion, and maybe more in the first-person shooter community, but also somewhat in League, every now and then of the use of like Adderall or other performance-enhancing drugs. Saint, have you ever thought or heard anything about this stuff?
Well, we actually sat down with our resident specialist, Dr. Amine. You guys all remember him, our resident genius, and we have an interview with him.
So strictly speaking of caffeine, right? People use caffeine in all sorts of stuff, though, and I don't think it's controlled in any sort of event. The issue with caffeine is it just basically boosts your awareness. It tells your body, okay, hey, look, it's time to be awake. It does the same thing as getting down and doing 20 push-ups. Do we tell people not to do 20 push-ups before a game? It gets your blood flowing, and it just makes you more aware. It's not really going to make you a better player. You can use it to wake up, that's fine, but if someone's already awake, then they don't really need caffeine. The other dangerous thing about caffeine is that you can crash, right? Or you have to keep taking caffeine. So do you want to be crashing 3 hours into a tournament, or do you want to stay on caffeine? So, I mean, people just have to find what works for them. I don't think caffeine is good or bad or an advantage. It just depends on how your body functions. Kind of like saying, should people who exercise not be allowed to play? That's a bit ridiculous. There probably is a mental aspect, right? There's the placebo effect. Anytime you take anything that's supposed to make you better, you feel better, right? You convince yourself that this is going to help me. It happens in diets and weight loss all the time, and in muscle building. And these things don't actually have as large of an effect as people think. Now, Adderall is a drug designed to combat attention deficit disorder. So it does help people focus. It does put you in a state of awareness. But it's, again, for me, I don't think it takes, it's something that people can't reach without that state, right? So you can basically emulate the effects of Adderall by just being focused, by being in the zone. I almost find these drugs as a crutch. I don't think any great player will get an effect. It'll make a player who has trouble focusing able to focus and bring out his full potential. But I don't think Adderall is necessary to attain one's full potential, if that makes sense. It basically is a stepping stone for people who can't actually focus, right? And then also the same thing that happens with caffeine. Anytime you induce a substance into your body, you create a loop where you become dependent on that substance to recreate the same effect. So you have to make a decision. Hey, am I going to use this Adderall continuously, or am I going to learn to attain this effect on my own? I think that, if there was a substance that did that, for example, if it made you twice as fast, literally it was proven to make you twice as fast in fingers. And so it took the best players and it made them twice as fast, and it took the worst players and made them twice as fast, so the best are still better. I think a substance like that should be controlled, because how do you know when someone's using it or not? Either everyone has to take it or no one can take it. And the Zubu Frost guy, sure, most people would say, okay, I don't want to look at the map. I wouldn't look at the map. I got morals, I got a code. But until you're right there in the heat of the action and it's staring you in the face, you don't know what you'll do. You might know what you'll do. Very few people actually know. They'll probably do the opposite of what they think. So I wouldn't lay it so thick on the Zubu Frost guy. I would lay it more on the organizers for poorly organizing something like that. And the other question of the fanatic one, for example, I mean, it depends. How many people have played WoW, for example? Most people who watch games like to play WoW because it's pretty easy to play. And they'll play the same game they watch usually, but most people have played WoW. How many people have sat on a roof in Gadget Sand and exploited terrain to kill people where guards couldn't get them, right? Technically, people could get banned for that, but everyone does it, and very few people get banned. So, I mean, where's the line? I guess it depends on what type of team you like. If you like a team that's really straight-laced and plays everything by the book, then probably that team's not for you. But if you like a team that's competitive and looking for any edge to win, I don't know. I don't know Counter-Strike well enough to tell you that I think Fnatic really cheated. Obviously, someone who made the decision did. I mean, there's really no right answer. Apple saves quadrillions of dollars by being in Ireland or something. And companies do this all the time. Are they evil companies? Should they pay their taxes? Or should the people who designed the system be the ones held to blame because they created all these loopholes, which essentially the rich richer and the poor poorer? There's plenty of ethical questions like that. I don't think there's a right answer. I think everyone's got to find the answer for themselves in terms of the fans.
So basically, to conclude, cheating in general is a terrible thing. Not only does it hurt you and the people around you, because if you get caught, you're probably going to get banished from that esport, or probably not going to get to play anymore, which is pretty bad for you. And it also hurts the scene in general. If you remember back to what Travis talked about with the Korean incident, I loved Warcraft 3, and I would have loved to have seen that as a game that was really prominent in America, and it never really got to take off because of the Korean incident. It only really became popular in China. And it hurts the whole scene in general, and it hurts everybody. So just don't cheat, guys. It's bad.
Yeah, I know that the whole theme of this has been cheating, in esports and all that stuff, but I'm also somewhat concerned, Saint, that maybe you've been cheating on me recently.
I'm out of here. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Alienwares Lost in the Saint, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and also special thanks to my guest, Travis Gafford, and we'll see you guys next episode.